Hi guys and welcome to this hopefully a very interesting discussion live 40k versus Dune. So I asked you guys on the community tab a week ago which are the universes that you think are getting the closest ways possible to 40k. I mean in what aspects they are getting close to each other. So a very good comparison could be made, and the closest one is still Dune. Now, obviously, there are some others. Some of you said like Halo, and other that are kind of new. One of them a TV show that I haven't watched yet, but all of these do not exactly go in how to say this. I mean, they're not just in that scope, but the one that is you can say in this kind of a scope, spanning for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, is Dune. So same as 40k, pretty much in that aspect. Ah, okay, guys. So I'm going to go in some key things that I think are, the most interesting, at least what stood out to me. If I miss something, they're just super huge universes. So, of course, that is tend to happen. But in whatever I can compare now, I'm going to do it. So, hopefully, it's going to be interesting, guys. Okay, let's start. So, first of all, 40k. I mean, some facts about 40k. Some of you that are already fans of Warhammer know, but for those of you that are not, of course, I'm going to go over some of the things, or I'm just gonna say in Dune things are this way, and in 40k things are that way. So when I first, started learning about 40k, some of you did say, "Oh, Gary, you have to look at Dune. 40k is basically based on Dune and all of those things." Well, in every science fiction that you can think of, Star Wars, that guy from Mars, I forgot his name. I mean, a lot of science fiction, obviously. There are similarities in how things work, so that's not news. And certainly between Dune and 40k, there are some, there are some ideas that kind of, seems a lot similar, but they're executed in a totally different way. So there's that. Also, 40k is not ending anytime soon, so it's still going as a history and a story. Before that, we have 30k, which is basically the the 3000 millennia 3000, but Warhammer is showing human history from the very beginning and after the 41st millennia. Now, Dune is also kind of doing this. There's also Earth there, so humanity's birthplace is Earth. Humanity's birthplace is Terra, in 40k. So there's that. But from then on out, in Dune, humanity spreads. They conquer other planets. I mean, they colonize other planets and terraform them, as far as I found out. And on that planet, Dune, they discovered the worm, which basically with his excrements, they get in contact with water, and that is how a chemical reaction happens and the spice melange is produced. And from that, we have this spice that makes people live longer, sometimes twice as longer, and it's also addictive. So if you start taking it, you have to take it your whole life if you get addicted, because otherwise you're going to die. So yeah, there's that too. Hi to everybody in the chat, guys. Thank you very much, FGO. Thank you so much. Checking your comments real quick. So, Dark, Dune wins in space travel and Warhammer wins in military force. That is like the least comparison that you can make. I mean, the universes go far beyond in depth in terms of everything else. Space travel is like the least thing that is the point. I always look for the deeper meaning of things and not just, here's that, here is this. Yes, of course, there is comparison to be made in those aspects, but meaning like the core of why even these two stories exist, like what is the core meaning, that's kind of more important, and that is what is making them mostly different from each other. And of course, the other things that we have to get into. So I'm gonna quickly look at your comments right now and then continue, because we have to keep this as tight as possible in a video format. And of course, after I finish my thoughts, so I don't forget all the complexity that we must get into. After that, I'm going to look at your comments, but it's very important for me to keep my thoughts, going before I forget, because there's so many details here. I do have notes, but Okay, so let's. Oh, thank you very much, dear Clayton, for the feedback. Moonlight hides you too. Warhammer wins because the be- uh, the the beings that inhabit the verse, for example, the chaos gods themselves, can play around with the concept of time itself like a toy. Well, I'm not exactly doing a comparison like in this kind of a way, although I'm gonna touch upon that. I'm not doing a comparison of like which universe is more powerful, although I am going to touch upon that. But yeah, that's not the focus, but definitely we are going to talk about that. Remind me, because that's not exactly in my notes, but it's well, it is interesting. Of course, important to point out what is more powerful. Okay, so the space is something to do with the worm's young. What? The spice is something to do with the worm's young. Well, thanks, dear Kaito, once again. Like I've said, the spice is basically produced by the worm's excrement that get into contact with water, and from that chemical reaction, and yeah, I'm not gonna repeat myself. Then the spice melange is produced, and they have also another type of fluid that the Bene Gesserit, Jesus, sisters are able to transform and to drink another topic. So the point is not history of both, but where their histories and lore meet or have some kind of similarities, and then who is the most powerful, basically. So, first aspect that we're going to get into is how the humanity expanded. So, like I said, in Dune, humanity expanded, went to different planets. People changed because, physically, of how the planets were, in terms of climate and all of that. Although there were terraformed, but in case of Doom, Arrakis. The Fremen, for instance, they consumed so much of the spice, and that became their existence, like as a whole, what defines them, basically. So there's that. um, so yeah, there's different houses that want to control, want some kind of a control, and we know that some particular very disgusting guy went after the Atreides because he thought that they're a threat and all those things. But that's like the beginning of the story, the first book, what the movie's gonna be focusing on. But I'm just mentioning that like for context. Okay, and in 40K, the birth of the humanity is once again on Earth, which is Terra, and 40K, follows our history, the closest possible, you can say, to a point to real human history, and then it gets into the fantasy of things. The God Emperor, which is not the God Emperor, it's just the future Emperor of Earth, this wonderful guy here, is born, and it's a speculation also how he is born. Either a lot of shamans that had some kind of a psychic powers sacrifice himself, Jesus Christ, themselves to so their souls can combine, and this one being can be born from their sacrifice, or he is some kind of a product of the old ones, which are like one of the ancient godlike creatures of the universe. But that is, yeah, something that in Dune does not exist. Also, there's other such creatures that in Dune, I don't know if that exists. I don't think so. I went through, um, that part as well. I didn't see anything similar to to the old ones, or just gods, ancient gods, all of those things. I didn't see anything like that. So this is where they differ as well. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so we have this god emperor. It's not god yet. It's not considered a god. So we have the most powerful being in the whole universe, basically, and from mankind, coming from mankind. That is the emperor. That in the continuous, I mean, in his continuous existence, he is a lot of different people, and eventually he takes his role and becomes the emperor of mankind through the unification wars. He creates warriors, special warriors, and yeah, before that we have also the age of strife. You know, in Dune also we have this age where humanity had this rise of technology, the thinking machines, and those thinking machines get totally against humanity, which made the machines, which rendered the machines basically forbidden to be used. So technology just reached a certain level and AI was forbidden. That's in Dune, and in 40K, something like that also happened. In 40K, we had the STCs, which are these extremely advanced machines that contain all the information of humanity, and they are capable to be used like for building different worlds, technologies, whatever. They are just extremely intelligent, but they got scattered and almost, well, disappeared from existence, basically. Okay, so here we don't have, we have obviously the similarity where we see the machines in Dune, they're like, no, no, we don't want that. And in 40K, we have the same thing, no, no, we don't want that. Okay, then we have the Bene Gesserit, and they are something that in 40K, I don't know anything similar to the Bene Gesserit. They are women, only women that have, certain, well, they're not psychers. Telepathy, they had that in the movie, but as far as I know, that's not exactly how it is. In the books, they have something like a foresight, and they also are annoyingly trying to manipulate the universe by creating false predictions. Basically putting some prophecies out of their butts, so that way these prophecies just repeat themselves. People start believing them, and they are integrated into their minds, and mostly that goes for the arrival of the of Paul Atreides as their, I can even say that, but is basically the female Bene Gesserit, who will see where they cannot see. He will have more of a foresight. There's another word for that, but yeah, he will see more than them. That's what is the point. And they really wanted to create him, selective breeding through the years, and they created those predictions, prophecies. So hopefully someday they can fulfill them by creating him. But in reality, there was no a real prophecy coming from somewhere. They just said, "Hey, we're going to create this guy." And expect him, okay? They didn't say that, but they were like, well, this guy's gonna come. But they didn't say to everybody, well, we are making this up and we're hopefully hoping to make this happen. So in terms of religion that is totally manufactured and beliefs that are totally manufactured, the Bene Gesserit are the ones that are doing that. So they're basically trying to, present themselves as very quiet, modest, and obedient, or something like that, just serving the Imperium, but at the same time, they're actually weaving their own webs and creating their own, things. But we don't have equivalent to that in 40K. At least I haven't seen so far. Okay, let me see what you guys are saying. So a pause so I can catch up with the comments real quick, because this concludes that part with the Bene Gesserit, and I'm going to the next one, so I can pause here. Alexander, hi to you. The Elder, what about the Elder? No, no, nothing about the Elder. No, they're not like the Elder, guys. They're not even aliens. They're humans. So we are dealing with humans here. That's another difference that, thank you for pointing out, we're dealing with humans. Only humans here. They're totally not the equivalent of the Eldar in any kind of way. They don't have like some kind of a specific powers. Prescience, yeah, the word is prescience. So they can see like into the future. That is their main power. That's it. And they want Poe Atreides to become that guy that can see more than them. That is just simplifying things. So I don't see how they're like the Eldar. Eldar are psychers. They're no psychers with psychic powers, with lighting coming out of their fingers or anything like that, with the world of Dune. So that's why we're here to compare. So that's not a comparison at all. There's just nothing similar there. Well, Faris, thank you very much for that. Well, I hope that you sleep better. Uh, Mutants in Dune, okay. I have not checked if they did have mutants. I mean, I literally went through the whole history, didn't see mutants, but maybe. Getting pierced so easy to get now is getting a new console. That's another topic, Alex. That's another topic. If you guys comment something that is not on the topic, I cannot comment on that. I have to, I have to go by the topic. I already checked a lot of things, like I've said, went through the whole history of Dune, literally all the books. That doesn't mean that I know every fact. That's why I'm focusing on particular things that are relevant, to make comparison with 40K that I discovered. That doesn't mean that I discovered everything. I can always make a part two if there's more, of course, but the lamented, thank you very much for that. No, I know I'm going to make a review of that episode of Angels of Death. No, there are no gods in Dune. That's also what I said. That's exactly what I said 5 minutes ago. I don't know when you joined, but as much as I went, I mean, for what I saw from the history of all the books, I didn't see any equivalents to chaos gods or like real gods whatsoever. Although once again, the gods from 40K are also not exactly real gods. I mean, they are compared to us, but then I talked about that a lot of times. Even Dan Elbert talked about that too, and he said they're not exactly gods like we thought, like gods are supposed to be. That's another topic, but yeah, nothing like the chaos gods at all in the Dune universe. So we have we have the Navigators, dark. I was getting there. Well, the Navigators are not mutants. I mean, you can call whatever mutant then. So the Navigators in Dune are basically, taking so much of the spice that they became looking, well, not human at all, and that is how they get their abilities to navigate through space. So space travel in Dune is depending on the navigators, because they are the ones that can do that, seeing obstacles in space and all of that, which is due to the spice. So the spice is what makes them different, but they're still human. You can say, you can use, the word mutant, because they mutated, but they are not mutants in other senses. So yeah, like what to tell. I mean, they're not. Depends on what you understand by a mutant. For me, that's not the conventional types of mutants, but okay. I mean, you can call them that in a sense, for sure. And in 40K, we have navigators, which are sensitive to the warp, and they're not mutants by any means. They do not look ugly or whatever. They're just people that can navigate through the warp and say, whatever. I mean, where there's no storms, where there are, or where can you go out from the warp, like whatever they need to know, so the ship, whatever ship can pass through that, and they're using a lot of strength that causes them a lot of strength, physical strength as well. I mean, that psychic strength is just drawing from their physical vitality, so that's not the best thing ever. So navigators from both is totally different. Also, there's no such thing in Dune as the warp. Yeah, so there's just no such thing. It's just, I mean, in Dune is just traveling through space, exploring other planets, just scatter. And we're going to get to the scattering as well if I can. Okay, so we have the absolute belief in power in Dune, belief in religion, which religion is just based on, well, basically, like I've said, made up stuff that are like intentionally made up by the Bene Gesserit. They meant this word. And we have also, um, you know, Poe himself becomes like a god to them, and he is not actually a hero. The author himself, the writer, he said that he wanted to show with Dune that the ultimate meaning of Dune is that look at human leaders throughout history that are charismatic and how those people make us believe blindly to them, not questioning authority. The point is of Dune to question authority, just what makes people to trust them, to follow them, and what makes that authority actually having any kind of a right to lead us because they have their own vision of things, their own will that they like to oppose on people. So that's one thing that is definitely a very prevalent theme and meaning of the whole, Dune series. In 40K, of course, we have the God Emperor. I mean, once again, just the emperor of mankind, and how his vision is also opposed on humanity, how he, uh, basically goes through a lot of human lives. That is just a metaphor, meaning that he lived for thousands and thousands of years, gathering all kinds of information about humanity, how they're ruled, their psychology to a point, and in the end, presenting himself in a very godly manner, but saying that he doesn't want to be worshipped as a god. And then when he ascended to the golden throne, basically being a corpse that is functioning only metaphysically, he became ironically a god, and people did that, instead of him against his will, but at the same time, he did show a lot of signs that he wanted to for this to happen, and he just laid the ground and pretended that that's not the case. But that's, once again, I talked about that so many times, not gonna get into that. But yeah, the difference is here is that we have only one emperor. Here we have Paul, and then we have his son, Leto II. So Dune is focused on them, and actually more focused on Leto in the later books. So yeah, that's also a difference. We have two, and the god, the god emperor that you see there, the worm guy, he is Leto II. And how is he comparing? I was going to get to that later on, but how is he comparing to our guy here? Well, there's like huge difference between the two. I mean, the only comparison, I mean, similarities is that Leto is called the God Emperor, and eventually the Emperor of Mankind is referred to as the God Emperor. But other than that, there's just nothing between them that is like similar. I really, yeah, I don't think so. First, 40K's Emperor, he has psychic powers, like he's the most powerful psyker. He can do so many things. He have foresight. He has, like powers, physical powers that he can manifest. I mean, with the energy that even his sword emanates. I mean, there are so many things about him that are superhuman. He is huge. He is like 3 meters tall or more. He is physically, well, he can be harmed, but with very good special weapons, not just with any weapon. He has his awesome armor, that's another thing. He can present himself to different people looking different ways. depending on how he liked it to be viewed by others. So a lot of powers that he can, I mean, a lot of things that he can do in terms of mentally and physically, extreme intelligence, and all of that. Although, once again, his wisdom is very under question because of all the choices that he made that led to his position in the Golden Throne. Once again, another topic, another controversial thing that we discussed already in many videos, or a few very lengthy, dedicated to his nature ones anyway, where Leto basically decides to create, I mean, to create, not to create, but to become this hybrid of worm and human because he is just a human. He is, you know, consuming a lot of the spice, combining himself with the worm throughout time. So he is becoming more of the worm, more of the worm. That allows him to live for thousands of years, and that is why he's basically called the god emperor. He has, you know, the strongest prescience in the universe, so he can see forth and back in time what's gonna happen. He can know if anybody is plotting against him, except if they're in a particular room or place where he cannot actually read through. So it's kind of like Superman's vision. He cannot see through lead, something like that. He is, you know, physically very well, invulnerable to most weapons basically. So it's very hard for someone to, you know, hurt him at all. He also had a great plan called the Golden Path, and he decided to force humanity and to, I mean, through countless deaths of billions of people, to oppose on humanity this path in which they will become, well, basically protected from prescience. And eventually that did happen, but that's complicated to explain. And he died, like completely died, just fell into water. He was basically assassinated. uh, I mean, his wife to be was also the target, but she died. He died because he dropped into water and he dissolved, which is, to be, that's kind of funny. But that is his like only and strongest weakness, because he is a worm now. I mean, to this point, he is pretty much only a worm. He fell to his death, decomposed, dissolved into thousands of centrioles, which contained pearls that had Leto's consciousness, and basically he is existing in some kind of a way there in a dream that is like repeating on a loop, something like that. So a very very bad way to die, just horrible. I mean, that's worse than that. So yeah, nothing compared to our guy here, because the Emperor of Mankind, he still has chance to come back physically, like we saw in the last book that I reviewed, and he is on his way with the help of Gilliman. Okay, we have. I'm gonna check your comments, guys, but we have to go through this, and after that, because it's very late my time. Sorry, and we have still some very key things to. Sorry, I saw like something flying here. I'm like, what is that? Okay. So yeah. So to add, well, from my notes, basically, Dune is like critique of a savior. To critique this type of thinking that somebody will save us instead of people saving themselves, instead of people taking more of a, well, self-development and focus on themselves in terms of, I mean, if you develop yourself, your intelligence, your consciousness, you're more also in a help. I mean, you could be in help of others more, you could be more valuable person and not develop this sheep mentality. That's kind of the point. Taking advantage of the lower classes in Dune in 40K as well. Yeah, you can see that people that you know, just can't live in a normal way. They're just like she basically is the same thing. I mean, it's very similar thing. The golden path is tyranny, and the path of our guy here, his vision also is tyranny. I mean, he goes to conquer planets, to expand humanity, but is like an ultimatum for each of these planets. He's like, either join me or I'm gonna kill ya and perform exterminatus or just take you by force. I mean, exterminatus is something that is more like the inquisitor do inquisitors after he is already on the golden throne. But the point is that it's ultimatum when it comes to how the emperor does things. And he also has something like the golden path, the vision of humanity, what humanity can become. But for that to happen, millions, I mean untold billions, should die. uh, yeah, so that is very similar between the two. uh, and well, what to tell ya? I mean, there's a lot more to that about the psychic powers, how he himself the best psyker ever, but he doesn't want his sons to use the powers and those powers. That's a long story, but yeah, the Emperor of Mankind, he has his Astartes, he has his sons, the Primarchs, which there's nothing like that in Dune, not even a little bit. There are, however, a particular female army that is the closest to the God Emperor. So let me just see. Yeah, they're called the Fish Speakers. They are priestesses. They are fanatically loyal. So if the freaking worm emperor says, "You go, girl, impale yourself on that sword right there," they would just go and do that, no questions asked. So they follow his will without any questions. It doesn't matter if the god emperor of worminess, wishes that, they just go and do it. So that is basically, yeah, it's, well, I mean, in 40K we have Sisters of Silence, Sisters of Battle. Sisters of Battle, they're the religious ones, those that perceive the Emperor as a religious figure. They pray to him, they get powers from that, when they're praying, and it seems like the Emperor's powers I mean, they do help in certain situations. We have Saint Celestine, other saints that manifest out of nowhere and help in particular very, very tight situations when there's, yeah, when there's need for them, which is a rare occasion, but it does happen. The point is, Sisters of Battle and Sisters of Silence, they're not with the same function, they're not as fanatical. I mean, they are obviously extremely loyal, but there's also, I mean, at least in sisters, between the Sisters of Battle, and when I read some of the Horus Heresy books, I saw some some aspects of the Sisters of Silence before they become one. They do have their own minds, and they're not like, oh, we don't have any opinion on anything. So it seems like that both sisters in the 40K are not as fanatical, not as nuts, not as like automatons of fanatical devotion or something. Not that bad, at least. So if there's another, like next stage of crazy fanatical, those fish speakers are that exact thing. But they're fearless warriors, and they can kill, well, whoever. I mean, since they're like his personal bodyguards, they're maybe close to the custodes in efficiency, but other than that, like nothing is there to. I mean, there's not equivalent, no equivalent here. Okay, so those are the main points between Dune and 40K. Another, I mean, other points. So we have, I mean, in Dune we have this, uh, the thousands of years of the rule of the God Emperor. He knows that he's not a god. He opposes his will. He is aware of himself to a point, but he still has an ego, it seems like a lot. Uh, it doesn't seem like there's some particular meaning other the fact that he wanted humanity to be like free of precedents, people with this power. Other than that, I mean, Dune, I don't know what to tell. It's dark because one of the questions that I had, like, what is darker than 40k? Is there anything darker than 40k? And Dune is close to that because just feels like there's just nothing has really meaning. It's only like Game of Thrones, like fight for power. I mean, here and there, like there's some meaning to things, like the cautionary tale of how people should not be blindly following authority, especially charismatic leaders that look like they're the thing, they're like different from anyone else. I mean, I do think that there are some people like that in general and throughout history, real human history. I mean, but you always have to have one in mind. That means, you know, to always have your own um, judgment and intelligence, just to measure everything, to do not follow other people's opinions, just try to find as much as, as much as information you can, and, create your own opinion. Because a lot of times we see that today, how people vote for someone just because their parents are voting for that person, and you have no idea why you're doing it, and that's just stupid. So we have enough of real world examples of like falling like sheep and all of that. But yeah, the point is that they're just very different universes, and even if 40k, I mean 40k is after 20 something years after Dune, so of course there's some elements that are similar, but 40k is like completely built universe on its own. 40k also borrows a bit from like Starship Troopers in some elements, but once again, I never seen anything like the Astartes, like how they are, how they look, how they function, the fact that they are based on their Primarchs. From each Primarch, there's a first original chapter uh, that is following their Primarch's values, their weaknesses and strengths and qualities. So, I mean, if I have to say now, before I get to your comments, if I have to say which universe is the most powerful, in 40k, you have the psychic powers, you have the warp, you have the gods, you have the ancient ones, you have you know just other beings that are so powerful, extremely powerful. Also, if you look at Warhammer Fantasy, you have, yesterday we saw in the trailer of Cathy, we saw these emperors that turn into dragons. I mean, there are dragons that turn into people. They have human form. That's just so amazing. But that's fantasy. Still, still, Warhammer in general to me is just much richer. Now, in terms of sense, meaning, all of that, Warhammer is leaning more towards the esoterical and the spiritual, although it does not have, once again, like a perfect equivalent to like esoteric science knowledge. It does touch upon these topics, and it has some kind of a form or a twisting of, distortion of these aspects, whereas Dune barely has anything. Like all their powers of prescience, it seems like, oh, it's coming from their asses. I mean, it said that it's human development through the millennia and all of that. But, the spice enhances that a lot. Okay, but that power that is actually non physical, they want to tell us that it just comes from the physical. So, it's that whole spiritual part and gods, like real gods, is absent from Dune, and even the god Emperor Worm says that he is actually not a real god in that sense. Yeah, he's not, so he doesn't deserve to be called a god. He's just not. So all that he can do, uh, he cannot like do this and bring something to life. He cannot do any of that. He can just sit there and guide humanity in direction that he thinks is like the perfect path, and there's just no other way, because other way humanity is gonna be like destroyed. Really topic for another video. The point is how those two universes compare. So 40k is still going. We have 30k before that, which is amazing. I just love 30k. I just love to explore a lot more 30k, just because it's just so interesting. I mean, after the emperor went to the throne, it's just like now what do? We just fight like different factions, that we just hate Xenos, and it's totally different. 40k is totally different. So I can't ever say that wow, 40k borrowed so much from Dune. Like, I mean, no. When you write a story, because I also try to be a writer at some point, you have concepts that you like in your head. You have knowledge from reading a lot of books, for example. You have knowledge of concepts that other people maybe have not studied, like the esoteric. And you want to create a fictional story with all of those things. So you're going to have stuff that are going to be like repetitive, in a way. If I want to create a space soldier, I have to think about their armor, how it's gonna function, why it's going to function this way, and somewhere, somehow, things are going to repeat. But we see that the Emperor of Mankind from 40k is like nothing like the God Emperor from Dune. We see that there is no Astartes in Dune. We see that there's no worms in 40k like that and produce anything like the spice. We see that in Dune there is no warp and spirits, and yeah. We see that the female warriors are basically these fish speakers that are like living weapons, which is not what Sisters of Battle and Sisters of Silence exactly are. And yeah, space travel is different, and uh, only those that have, yeah, I mean, the navigators are the only ones that make that possible because of their consummation of the spice. So yeah, that is basically it, guys. Now let's see your comments. Yeah, they look awful, the navigators, elemented. Okay, reading. Give me a second. The gods of power, or gods to fight the kingdom. No, I already explained what Dune is about. Uh, I mean, in Dune they evolved technically, but without the AI, because when they canceled that, they also got some kind of a period of technology stagnation. So there's that, because without the AI, they cannot advance in certain ways, and they have to rely on no AI and still have technology. So there's that. Mm. Mm, the 40k navigators have a cyclopean eye? What? Through all the things that I went through, I never saw that. Okay, maybe some do. Yeah, some do. Oh, that's great. That's great. I haven't saw that many pictures of how they're portrayed, but yeah, they do. Oh yeah, I'm starting to remember the flight of Eisenstein. I think there's something about that there, the description, but really it didn't stood out to me, so maybe that's why I totally forgot about it. Yeah, navigators can see into the warp, although that's kind of irrelevant. I mean, they're already so different that this detail is like irrelevant. Ferris, what does iPhone has have to do with anything? And I am not an Android. I'm not an iPhone fan, so I don't care about the iPhone, honestly. Uh, okay, can there only be one god? For which universe? For 40K, a lot, a few, a lot, a few, enough. Let's say a lot, a few, enough. For Dune, none. The Warhammer 40K Emperor did beat up some Xenos worms to save humans before. Yeah, but there's even if they're worms, they're just totally different worms. We have worms here now. You can go pick some from the soil. There's gonna be very small worms, but that's not like something that significant. Well, thanks, Alexander. Oh, Optic ICU. Okay, so the guy that died by water was like an alien on another planet? What? No. No, he's a human being. A very special one, but human being no less. Uh, oh, well, thanks, Ferris. Thank you. Thank you. And even Clayton thanks you. Thank you, dear Clayton, as well. Optic thanks. Okay, Dark. Warhammer does have a lot more books and lore than Dune. Yeah, I mean, first when I started look into Dune, and I actually went through the whole first book almost completely. But honestly, even in audio form, it's a bit hard to follow. It's just the way it's written. It's just not exactly my style. But the point is, after that, I discovered there are so many other books of Dune, and I had to go through the lore of all of them for this. But yeah, I mean, like I've said, 40K is still going, and it has so many books. I can't even get through the Horus Heresy yet. So yeah, it's much richer. We already established that if you have to purely say which of these wins, just by richness, power, levels, like scope, 40K wins. Like 10 times over, just no context. No context. Um, Warhammer is not a character, it's the whole universe. Yeah, it's totally not a character. It's a whole universe. Well, not every faction in Warhammer 40K are Xenos. You mean Xenon, no Xenos. There's a lot of factions in 40K that are Xenos, aliens, but humans are like vastly spread in the whole universe. That's kind of the point of the Emperor. He wanted to colonize as much as worlds as possible so humanity can rule the universe. So yeah, I mean, humanity is like the annoying annoying splinter in the elders' asses, let's say. But then you have the other disgusting alien factions like gene stealers, and I'm just thinking about the new episode of Angels of Death too. So yeah, the gene stealers is horrible, Tyranids, and the orcs, and yeah, so on. Yeah, so uh, well, Dark, you have to be more specific. Yeah, I mean, humans are alien to each other. That's a bummer. That's a bummer. And that's another thing. Although humans in different planets, still humans. Although once again, they are looking different in some places depending on where they are. Now, for instance, when you look at the Primarch, um, it's just getting so late, guys, that I'm starting to forget things. They just slip my mind. But when you look at Vulcan, his Astartes look totally different from anyone else. They're just like well, dark skin like Ash. So that's interesting, and it's all because of the planet that they're on, where he landed when he was a baby. That's interesting. But as far as the comparison, guys, those are the comparison. If there's anything else, like I said, I can always make a part two. If there's anything I missed, you can comment down below. It's gonna be interesting for me to read. But for now, guys, super late here. So thank you so much for watching. I will try to do Angels of Death review tomorrow for sure. Like, it's gonna be my priority if you want to watch that. But it was pretty good episode, pretty good. But there's a lot to talk about there. So have a good night, sleep well, and till next time with me, Gary G Reviews. Kisses, guys.